Hello, 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 and welcome to Girl, How'd You Do That? I'm your host, Heather Campese, and I'm glad you're here today. So, COVID-19 and social distancing isn't going to keep the two of us apart, is it? Listen, I got another great episode on tap, so let's dive right in. We're going to spend some time today discussing another global pandemic. This topic is Alzheimer's disease. Now, before we talk to our amazing guest, I just want to go over some stats for you. Were you aware that 5 million people have Alzheimer's disease right now in the United States? That's currently 1 in 10 Americans age 65 and older who have Alzheimer's dementia. And it's estimated that it's going to jump to 5.8 million Americans age 65 and older by the end of 2020. Now, I've been affected in two ways with this disease. One, I had the good fortune to fall into the industry right after my divorce, some 12 years ago, when I started working in a skilled nursing facility and then on to working in assisted living environments. And I got to tell you, once I started working with patients and residents in memory care communities, well, I knew that was the population I wanted to serve. So I worked in the field of Alzheimer's and dementia for about 5 years. However, last summer, this dreaded disease hit home for me as my own precious mother started showing signs of dementia. And she was later diagnosed just this last November with Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease has decided to unpack her bag and make a permanent residency with my family. And I got to tell you, I couldn't be more devastated or pissed off about it. I've watched families over the years grapple with this devastating news and flounder in a senior healthcare system that can be confusing at best. Helping adult children and spouses of those with dementia has been one of the most rewarding parts of my career. And now I've become one of them. And I have to admit that this journey is a lot harder physically, mentally, and emotionally than I could ever imagine. So before we go any further, one of the common states of confusion for most folks who hear the words Alzheimer's and dementia is, what is it? And are they the same? I've also heard the statement used before, oh no, my mother has Alzheimer's. She doesn't have dementia. So I want to help you with this by giving you the best analogy that helped me when I first started in the business. I want you to picture in your head right now a giant black umbrella. This umbrella is dementia. And under that umbrella are the types of dementia. And it's interesting to note here that there are currently 400 different types of dementia that are currently being recognized. But the most common types of dementia right now are Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, and quickly sneaking up to the third place is Lewy body dementia. So just remember that dementia is the disease. Alzheimer's is the type of dementia. So with all this in mind, I'm really excited and honored to introduce my next guest. She's a successful entrepreneur, media strategist, and nationally recognized radio and TV personality. She's the author of the best-selling book, Rock to the Top. And as a popular motivational speaker, Dayna has brought audiences through the rock star principles of success. She learned them firsthand from the world's greatest rock stars. She's taking the audience on a wild, fun, and thought-provoking rock journey from backstage all the way to the top of the charts with true stories and the pictures to prove it. She's created the Space Store, the first NASA-related online store. She created Smart Girls Rock to encourage girls to pursue STEM studies and has written 11 books on success. She's also the mastermind behind YourDailySuccessTip.com, helpful bits of advice each weekday morning for a lifetime of success. But she's also a daughter. And for today's episode, we're discussing the book she wrote about her mother's journey entitled Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine. A caregiver memoir that takes readers through her mother's journey with Alzheimer's using dark humor and raw emotion. I love her already. Dayna Steele, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having
You
me.
know, I wish I could say that we didn't share this journey, but I'm glad I can share it with somebody who uses dark humor to get through it. So tell us.
Not a day, a week. I mean, uh, I hear from people all the time who pretty much say the same thing. I'm so sorry we have to share the same journey, but goodness, you talked about it, and you say these things so that because we're all thinking it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So why don't you tell us about your mom and how this journey started for you?
My mom was the life of the party and the center of attention at all times. For somebody who wasn't famous, she just, I don't know, people just gravitated to her. Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, thought she was hysterical. Rick Barry, who was an extremely famous basketball player, ended up buying the home I grew up in. Um, mom mom played tennis and ended up working for tennis great John Newcomb when he built his first tennis club. I mean, she was full of personality, and then she wasn't. My dad had had a series of strokes, and she was having to take care of him, and she was starting to do some goofy things, and I would say, "Mom, I told you not to do that," or whatever. And then when he passed, it was like it all of a sudden we realized that dad had created a routine for her. And when he died, the routine was gone. You notice those big, like, I found complete conversations with me written down on post it notes, which was really pretty smart. So if Dana says this, I say this. If Dana says this, I say this. She had these conversations mapped out. So she knew something wasn't
Right.
right. Keep me from seeing something wasn't right. And and then I saw it and I realized again, though, I just thought it was old age. We don't have cancer, we don't have heart disease, we don't have broken bones, we don't have anything. My grandmother lived to on my dad's side lived to 93. My grandfather was like 84 and dropped dead of a heart attack at an elevator for his annual checkup. I mean, it was just I didn't know what to do with the diagnosis. I was so
And
stunned.
where were you in your life personally, like career and family wise, when this all happened?
The kids were let's see, married. The oldest had graduated from college and was working and living in Denver and married. Um, my son Dak was, let's see, he would have been in 5 years ago. Yeah, he would have been in college. So he was at the University of Texas, going to school, starting his life. And then my youngest was in high school. He was actually going to early college high school. So going to college and high school at the same time. And my career was going great guns. I decided to go back to college just for the fun of it. I remember the only good thing that came out of this was I got to drop biology because 40 years later, I still
Still
sucked
sucked.
at biology. Uh, and I hated it. I really don't care what the parts of a flower are ever. Um, and so I moved her out closer. We shut down the house. We moved her into an independent living where she had her own apartment, and she was the life of the party there. She was playing bingo. She was making cookies for people. She was still cooking. But I remember, still thinking things are getting a little weird, getting a little weird. And at one point, they called me and said, we're going to have to move your mom downstairs um, to more care. She keeps trying to carry her walker down the stairs, and it was just little things
Well,
like
can I
that.
can I
So,
back up a minute, Dana? Was she
yeah,
open to going to the independent living after being in her house all those years?
I had to make promises and tell little white lies. I tell people who are dealing with Alzheimer's patients, it's okay to lie. Forget everything you've ever been told. It's okay to lie.
Right. No,
Um, I told
I
my
agree.
mom, you're almost an hour away from me. So that's an hour there. And then and then I'm with you for an hour or so, or we have dinner, or I need to come solve whatever crisis has happened. And there was a crisis all the time in her own mind. And then it's an hour back, and I was like, "Mom, I love you, and I just can't do this." And but then I started saying things like, "Oh my gosh, we could see each other every day. You could come over for dinner every night. The kids would love it." And I tell you what, I won't sell your house. I won't even put it on the market for 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, if you hate this, I will personally pay to move you back. I will take care of everything. So it was sort of that she knew her house was still there. She knew a lot of the things that we didn't take with us were still there. Um, and quite honestly, at the end of 3 months, she quit asking.
Okay, so that was good. So she acclimated well into the independent living.
Right. And then we realized that, yeah, because they had bingo and she could cook. And again, she was the life of the party. And she wasn't, she didn't, once dad was gone, she realized, I think, that she was a little lonely where she was living. So becoming the life of the party, my aunt is really good at interior design. She took all of mom's things that we could take and had curtains made. I mean, she made her apartment just beautiful, and mom loved showing it off to people, that sort of thing. So a couple months into this, I realized she does not need to be driving. And she was still doing some of her jewelry business. She was still trying to drive into town to her suppliers. And I thought, she just does not need to be on a freeway. And my brother was going through a divorce, and the truck he drove belonged to my now ex sister in law. So again, a little white lie. Mom, Scooter is in really, bad shape right now. He doesn't have a car. He doesn't have the money to get a car. Why don't you let him use your car, and I'll just come get you every day? And if you need to drive into town or whatever, you can use my car or I'll take you, which we know was not
Right.
going to happen. And so 3 months into that, she started, every once in a while she'd say either somebody stole my car or you gave my car away or Scooter stole
Right.
my car. And I just have to remind her, she always liked to know that she was the one doing good for somebody else. So I would just gently remind her, "Oh, mom, no, you did such a good favor for Scooter. He's still getting back on his feet. He can almost buy a new car." And she bought that until she just kind of completely forgot. But that brings me to this story. I tell people, be aware you will have moments of clarity that will make you think everything's okay. They might make you think she's getting better, or it'll scare the living daylights out of you. Driving was one of those. Mom was well into, I think I had just moved her into memory care. She was in pretty bad shape. And I was driving her back to her memory care place, and we stopped at a red light. And at this point, she was really hunched over her. She just, she looked pitiful. And I looked over at her, and she was sitting up straight. It's like her face was glowing. It's almost like, she had this great smile and this serene look on her face. And she looked out the window and she looked back over at me. And in her strong, well voice, she said, "I'm never going to drive again, am I?" Scared me to death. But it was so nice to see my mom again. And I just started laughing and I said, "Oh, for God's sakes, I hope not." And she laughed, a full throaty, her wonderful laugh. And I laughed. And Heather, the light changed. And it was almost like an actress playing a role. The wrinkles came back. She hunched back over and she was gone.
Yeah, and you know what? I faced all of that because she literally got the diagnosis in November, and I went through all of it. Took the car away, and it was a for me, unfortunately, it was much nastier than that. And now she doesn't even miss the car. She's got a caregiver that comes in and drives her everywhere, like Miss Daisy. And she's always been the Gloria Swanson type anyway, that wants to be catered to and princess. So it's perfect.
Right. So you just have to find, I tell people, you need, first of all, lose the word remember. No, they don't remember. And the more you say remember, or I told you, or you know better, they don't. That part of the brain has died. It's gone. It's black. They don't remember. You can't reason. with an Alzheimer's patient, you can't tell an Alzheimer's patient what to do, but an Alzheimer's patient is still a human being, and human beings. This is something I teach in my speeches to business groups. Humans, customers, clients are. We all think the same three things all the time. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? And what's in it for me? So instead of saying you can't do that, instead say, wow, you know, you'd really be helping Scooter, and I'll come get you every day and take you to lunch. Well, she loved that because she wanted to see me every
Right.
day. So you have to put it, if you want them to do something, there at the beginning, if you want them to do something, let them know what's in it for them. You're going to get to play bingo every day. You're going to get to go to lunch every day. I'm going to come get you for dinner and we can cook and, whatever. Make stuff up.
Well, and let me ask you a question. So they called you and said, "Hey, we got to talk. She's starting to take her walker down the stairs. We think we need to move her." So was that your first of hearing of Alzheimer's?
No, no. Right after we moved her into assisted living, I see dad died in December. I took her to Vegas in February, which she loved the slot machines and she loved to travel. And we hadn't been there an hour when she kept asking me, when are we going home? So I knew something was wrong there. So came back, moved her into the independent living near me. And then, I took her, she had never seen me speak as a professional speaker to a business group. And I was speaking to about 1,000 people at a luncheon. And so I took her as my guest, and she would normally have just been absolutely in her element. That was her daughter, and she was so proud. She was my number one fan. She was the center of attention, and she could not follow any of the conversations at the table. And she kept saying, "Oh yeah, oh yeah," and then she'd do this little nervous laugh. She didn't know what people were talking about. So I made an appointment after that, and that's when they did the initial, I can't remember what the name of it, but it's, draw the numbers
Yep.
on a clock, remember three words, who's the president. They did the three words, and she went, what three words? They said draw the numbers on a clock. So she drew a round clock and she put 1 through 12 all on one side. I mean, so you don't even need the MRI or anything at that point. um, and when they asked who the president was, she was that man. So that's all she knew. It was a man.
So
Um,
I guess my question though is, so how did you get educated about the disease? Because working in the industry, I've been sales and marketing in the assisted living and memory care field for years now. And when families come to us and they've been recently diagnosed, they're like deer in headlights. They have no clue, where to go, what's going on. They get the diagnosis and that's it. So how did you learn? Did you educate yourself? Did you have a good neurologist? Did you go to support groups?
I saw an interview somebody did with my middle son, the college son, and he said, my mother attacked like a college class. She read, she called, she asked questions, and I posted it on Facebook after I called my brother, my nieces, my ex sister in law, my mom's two brothers, and a couple of her friends. I couldn't call anybody else. I could not say mom has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's one more time. I was done. And I've always had a pretty big following on Facebook. I call it it's like another radio show for me. And so I just posted on Facebook. I just took the chicken way out. I thought this is so personal and so wrong, but mom has such a huge network. I have such a huge network. Maybe this will get to some, I know I'm forgetting people. So I just said mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's today. And the next morning I got up, Heather, and there were over 1,000 replies. My mom, my sister, my wife, my dad, my grandmother, my aunt, my best friend. I mean, it was overwhelming. And I thought, well, hell, nobody talks about, why doesn't anyone, everybody's embarrassed. Nobody talks about it because it's so friggin' weird. And nobody talks about it. So I started posting. The first time I laughed at something she did, I felt so guilty. I posted on Facebook, is there something wrong with me? Because I find this quite hysterical. And people said, if you don't laugh, you're
Or
going
you're
to
going to go
cry.
crazy.
So I found, I just started to post everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, because I had found my therapy. I had found my support group. I had found my research group. I could ask any question within minutes, have an answer. I could post something I thought was funny, and within seconds, I would know if it was funny or not.
Right. No, I totally get it. I actually performed for the first time since her diagnosis. I do stand up comedy as well. And I did a set at the Tampa Improv in January, and I ended the show telling a story about driving her down here for the holidays. And she thought she saw giant dicks on all these semis. So it turned out to be Amazon trucks. But to her, she was describing these big, and you got to understand, my mother would never say that word before, so I couldn't help but find it humorous. But like you said, if you don't find the humor in the situation, you're either going to get massively depressed, crazy, or both.
I like to tell people the story of, where are we going to get a pedicure? Where are we going to get a pedicure? Where are we going to get a pedicure? 20 times, where are we going to get a pedicure? Finally, I just said, where do you want to go? She goes, I could really use a pedicure. And I went, that is a great idea. And yeah, and she's like, you are the best daughter. And I'm like, yes, I
That's
am.
great. That is great.
I also like to say it's just payback for all the times as a kid we said, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Where are we going? Are we there yet?" It's all of a sudden like you have a toddler on your hands. Don't touch that. Don't put that in your mouth. What are you doing? You can't go there. Close that door. Open that door.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah. It's like you're going full circle, and now you're the parent.
There's a wonderful story about Ronald Reagan that I use to illustrate you must live in their reality no matter how far removed it is from reality. And Ronald Reagan would get up every morning, and this was when he was well into the throes of Alzheimer's, and he would go outside and clean the leaves out of their swimming pool, and he would do it for a couple of hours. He would just for hours he would clean the leaves out of the swimming pool, and then he would come inside and Nancy would have lunch for him, and then he would go lay down for his nap. His Secret Service detail would pour all the leaves back in the pool, and he would get up from his nap and would not remember, and he would go outside, and until dinner he would sweep the leaves out of the pool. And then after dinner, after he went to sleep, the Secret Service and would empty the leaves into the. I mean, this went on for weeks.
Unbelievable.
You must live in their. You have to live in their reality. My mom thought she still played tennis, and I argued with her one day, and it made her so mad. My mom had not picked up. She was an A player. She hadn't picked up a tennis racket in probably 20 years, and she told me she had played tennis last week. I was, "What?" And it made her mad.
You're listening to my one-on-one interview with Dayna Steele, author of Surviving Alzheimer's, with friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine. You can find Dayna's book right now on Amazon.com, and you can also find Dayna at DaynaSteele.com. Now, back to the final portion of our interview. What part of the journey did you find most frustrating out of all of it?
The amount of work it took every day, and how tired I was, how sad I was. I remember my son, who I guess he was, how old was he then? He was 15. He was probably around 15. 13, 14, 15 when she went through this. And just one night at dinner, he blurted out, all you do is cry all the time. And, you know, that to me became the hardest part of the journey, was not losing my mom, but realizing what it was doing to my family. And I hadn't even noticed because I was so entirely focused from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to sleep, making sure she was happy, she had what she needed. I was lucky that we could afford care, and I had a very old at the time, multi-layer, level house. There was just no way she could live with us, and That probably was the other thing that I felt the most guilty about was my mom. Her dirty little secret was she hated old people. She hated old people and she hated wheelchairs and she hated what, was called nursing homes when she was growing up. And the fact that I had to put her in one, I don't think she ever forgave me for that.
You know what? I think they all. I mean, they all feel that way. I don't know if I'm going to feel that way. I'm not there yet, but that I seem to feel that when I talk to families, you hear that story over and over. My parents said, "Promise me you're not going to put me in an old folks home." And I told my own children who are grown now when they were little and I was in this industry, listen, just try to put me somewhere that gets the best diapers that you can afford.
Right.
Don't.
The most selfish thing people say is, "Oh, I don't need long-term care insurance. I don't need savings." The most selfish thing you can say is, "My kids will take care of me." You
Yeah.
spend all that time raising your kids, educating your kids, getting your kids out on your own, and now you want to ruin their life because you didn't make a plan? Make a damn
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah. And I think it's too, it's very shocking for people to find out just how much this costs. I mean, they have absolutely no clue. And I've actually had people say, I thought our Medicare would cover this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, it does not. It does not
No.
at all. Um, Texas has one of the best. Um, that's I'm trying to remember. I worked with a company that did a study on this several years ago, but it's like, California, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. Your average is something crazy like $12,000 a month for assisted living memory care. Texas is one of the lower states at an average of 5,000 a month. My mother had a little bit of savings, and but we went through all of that, and then we're lucky we had it, but in that last year of her life, we spent personally $42,000 out of pocket. And I like cheap wine. I tell people that's a lot of cheap
Right.
wine. That's a lot of cheap wine. And I'm glad that I could do it for her. But this is one of the most financially devastating things that will ever happen to your family. And people don't know what's coming. You can't leave an Alzheimer's patient alone. We're seeing the increase, the incidences of elder abuse are increasing substantially because people are like locking mom in a room at their home so they can go to work, or they're even handcuffing them to a bed. So as horrendous as that sounds, but it's to keep mom from wandering off or burning down your
Right.
house. Um, and you can't leave them alone. So people have to somebody has to quit their job. If you're married, then that starts to create all kinds of tension in a marriage and a relationship. Last thing I wanted to do was have sex at night. I didn't feel sexy.
Right.
I was exhausted. I was sad, and that was hard on my husband. These are the things people don't talk about.
And how long, Dana, was your mother's journey from start to finish?
Dad died in December of 2012, and she was diagnosed in March 2013. She passed away in October of 2015. So about 2.5 years with the actual diagnosis.
And that's a long 2.5 years for everybody involved.
And it's a short period of time compared to other stories I've heard.
Oh, yeah.
And we're doing this interview I'll listen to for years to come because I think it brings people comfort when we do talk about it and we do communicate and they know what others have gone through. Um, but we're in a pandemic right now, and I locked myself down early. I locked down 45, yeah, today would be 45 days, 45 days ago. And not a day has gone by that I don't at some point look at my husband or my son and say, thank God Mimi and Papa aren't alive.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would do it. I don't know how I would take care of them, how I would explain it.
Well, and I do belong to a rather large group on Facebook that is just, children and spouses of people with dementia. And I plan on sharing this on that Facebook page. And I can't tell you how many of them have been posting, you know, uh, my mom passed away.
with COVID, and didn't get to see her, or I haven't seen my mother in 30 days, and they've tried to do video chat with her, but she doesn't get it. It's not doing anything for her, and so, she doesn't understand the concept of where I am. So it is such a trying time for people right now that have a loved one with Alzheimer's.
I got a lovely letter. It was a very long letter from the director of a nursing home near me in Houston, who said if you don't have anyone in this sort of position, adopt a nursing home. If you're a dancer, go dance in the parking lot. If you're a singer, go sing in the parking lot. If you're a juggler, go juggle in the parking lot. Or just bring a chair and sit 6 feet apart and bring a megaphone and tell stories. Anything. If you can adopt a nursing home, that is one of the most hard hit places all over the country. And they're lonely. They are. I remember when mom was in I ended up moving my mom 6 times. That's another thing. Going off on a tangent here. Get rid of your shit,
Right.
please. Clean out. I moved my mother 6, and the hardest thing to decide every single time I moved her, I had to throw more things away or give more things away or sell more things, to the point that when mom was the very last move, she had her own clothes and 3 pictures. That was it. Don't make your kids do this. Oh my God. Don't, I mean,
Your
I
kids
like,
don't your kids don't want your collection of Hummels.
and I don't want your dishes and I don't want any of it. But then having to give somebody stuff away that it meant something to her. And I had to decide every time I moved her, is this something she would want or not? But where I was going with that before I went off into that tangent, get rid of your shit. I'm just not even going to use a nice word. It's shit. Get rid of it, please. Really, no one wants it. Get rid of it now. If it's in storage, if you have a storage unit or it's been in the attic, get rid of it. If you're not using it, no one else is going to use it. But I go back to the sheer number of people in these places who never had a visitor.
Yep.
Not one visitor. So if you're going a little stir crazy and you can get out, put on your mask, and even if you just blare Tony Bennett out of the windows of your car in the parking lot and wave and smile. You can't touch them, you can't get near them, you can't go in, but do something to entertain them in the parking lot once a week. Adopt a nursing
Yeah,
home.
and I got to tell you, Dana, they are going to be as we know, being a frail population, they're going to be the last ones to get their freedom back. They're going to be in this for, I think anyway, predicting for months from now. And apparently they're saying we're going to have another wave of this possibly in the fall. God forbid.
What people forget is that the Spanish flu, which was one of the most devastating pandemics that happened in our country, came in 3 waves, and the second wave was the deadliest. After the first wave, people felt like things were getting better. They let their guard down, and then they threw a huge parade that thousands and thousands and thousands of people came to. And I mean, we wiped out
Yeah.
generations in what was 1918. And now they're talking about opening up, bowling alleys and gyms and tattoo parlors, part of which, by the way, they're opening those things up so they can get people off the unemployment rolls.
What is the one takeaway from this experience that you would want others to know if they got nothing else from this podcast?
Have your affairs in order. There are 25 questions in the back of my book, Surviving Alzheimer's, that every family should have the answers to, from your teenagers on up. Where are the bank accounts? Do you have a safety deposit box? Do you have a power of attorney? Do you have a medical power of attorney? Do you have a legal power of attorney? Do you have a will? What sort of insurance? Who do you want me to call? I had the answers to 24 questions. The 25th question that I did not have the answer to and will forever feel that guilt is, if you become incapacitated, you cannot live with me. Where do you want to live? How do you want to live? Do you want me to take extraordinary measures, or do you want me to call a hospital? Make sure nobody wants to talk about death. And I have a little secret for you. We're all gonna die.
Yeah.
If you can have all of those things answered, it makes it so much easier on everyone at the end or as the end approaches.
Yeah, you're right. No kidding. Death and taxes, the only two things we can count on. So
And I go back to get rid of your
right.
shit. Please clean out your shit, please. Ah.
So listen, you're one of the busiest chicks in showbiz, from what I can tell. Your bio is incredible, and you're constantly doing projects. You told me that you've got a little project that's going to be happening, a one woman show. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, it's called The Woman in the Mirror. My mother kept complaining about this woman coming in her room. I just figured it was either the nurse or one of the residents. And it turned out to be the woman in the mirror. And so what I'm doing is taking the book, Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine, turning it into a one-woman show, a play. We're hoping to do it in November. It will probably be next year now that we'll debut it in Houston. I think with everything that's happening, nobody's going to be going to theater or anything the rest of this year. But it's about a 90-minute show. Uh, I was inspired by what the Constitution means to me, her one woman show. I was also inspired by the long ago hit, The Vagina Monologues. So it's about a 90-minute show where I go back and forth in the present and then, to the past, talking about the things that made me laugh and the things that made me cry. And then the last 30 minutes are a talk back. After every show, we'll do a Q&A, not only with me, but we'll try to have a long-term care specialist, an assisted living specialist, a neurologist, people that you need in your team to get through this.
That sounds like an absolute fabulous idea. I cannot wait to see it.
There is a Facebook page. It's called The Woman in the Mirror Play. And that's what I would suggest people do is just, like that page, follow that page. And as we get closer and can finally debut the show and then take it on the road, all the information will be there.
Fantastic. Dayna, you have been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking with you, and thanks for taking the time for Girl, How'd You Do That?
Thank you for having me. And, we're all in this together. It's just communicate, drink wine, and it's okay to yell every once in a while.
I agree. Thanks so much.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. I appreciate you tuning in. Join us next week, and please like and follow our page on Facebook, Girl, How'd You Do That? Tell a friend, and as always, stay safe, stay true, and you keep being you, girl. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves out there.